Dr. Ben Jacobs' hands felt unsteady as he stared at the patient's file, his gaze snagging on a detail that made him hold his breath. The elderly woman in room 512 had been seen by 40 of the nation's most prominent specialists over the last 8 months. Each one had departed more baffled than the last. But there, concealed in plain sight among the reams of unremarkable test results, was a clue so minor that Ben himself had nearly overlooked it. The subtle discoloration across the woman's fingernails wasn't just a random mark. It created a distinct pattern. He looked through the window at Eleanor Vance, matriarch and mother of corporate CEO Julian Vance, who lay frail and unresponsive in the hospital bed. 40 doctors had been unable to help her. Ben was merely a second-year resident, yet the pattern on those nails told a story that nobody else had taken the time to interpret. The patient's monitors beeped with a steady rhythm, but Ben understood that rhythm could falter at any second. He had been poring over Eleanor Vance's chart for hours when Dr. Samuel Harding entered the resident's lounge. His lab coat was impeccably starched, his demeanor one of stern authority. "Dr. Jacobs, I hear you've taken an interest in the Vance case," he stated, his voice carrying the gravity of his long career and a distinct lack of patience for junior doctors who got ahead of themselves. Ben looked up, his heart thumping. "Yes, sir. I believe I've found something." 40 specialists have reviewed that patient, Harding cut in, stepping closer. Experts in neurology, toxicology, and infectious diseases, the most brilliant minds available. What could possibly make you believe a second-year resident has seen something they all missed? Ben swallowed, his throat dry. "The pattern on her fingernails, Dr. Harding. They're Mies lines, but their distribution is atypical. It points to nothing." Harding's eyes narrowed. "The Vance family has been explicit. They demand results, not speculative theories from an inexperienced resident. You are to concentrate on your assigned duties. Is that understood?" But Ben couldn't dismiss it. Something about Eleanor's condition felt wrong, like a puzzle where the key pieces had been intentionally obscured. "Sir, if we could just perform one additional test." "You are dismissed, Dr. Jacobs." Ben stood frozen as Harding walked away, the file still open in his hands. Through the glass, he could see Julian Vance in his mother's room, his vast corporate empire rendered meaningless against the force that was methodically destroying his mother. It was at that moment Eleanor's monitors began to shriek. Ben ran. Dr. Harding was already inside the room as Eleanor's body began to convulse, her back arching violently off the mattress. Nurses rushed to her side as Ben pushed his way in. "She's crashing," a nurse shouted. Julian Vance was pressed flat against the far wall, his face ashen. "Do something. For heaven's sake, do something." Harding barked commands, but Ben's attention was fixed on Eleanor's hands. The discoloration had intensified. Whatever was coursing through her system was quickening its pace. "Dr. Jacobs, I need you out of this room immediately." Harding's voice sliced through the mayhem. But Ben had spotted something else, something that made his blood run cold. On Eleanor's wrist, partially hidden by her hospital bracelet, was a tiny injection mark, fresh, no more than a few hours old. Someone had administered something to her recently, and there was no record of it in her chart. The seizure ceased as abruptly as it began. Eleanor lay still, her breathing faint, as the machines tracked the failing systems of her body. Dr. Harding requested another series of tests, the same ones that had yielded no answers for 8 months. Ben stood in the hallway, his thoughts racing. That injection site wasn't in any of the notes. It wasn't part of any doctor's orders. Someone had been in Eleanor's room, off the record. "You're still here." The voice behind him was sharp. Ben turned to see Julian Vance, his tall figure casting a long shadow in the hallway. Up close, he bore no resemblance to the self-assured CEO from business magazines. His eyes were hollow, his expensive suit creased from long days at his mother's bedside. "Mr. Vance, I heard what you said to Dr. Harding." He stepped forward. "About her fingernails. About Me's lines." Ben's throat felt tight. "Sir, I'm only a resident. I shouldn't have—" "My mother is dying," Julian's voice cracked. 40 doctors have told me they have no idea why. If you have even the slightest inkling, I must hear it." Ben glanced toward Eleanor's room, where Dr. Harding was still in discussion with other physicians. His training screamed at him to defer to his superiors, but his intuition told him Eleanor didn't have the luxury of time for protocol. "Me's lines can be a sign of heavy metal poisoning," he said in a low voice. "But the pattern on your mother's nails isn't consistent with accidental exposure. It suggests repeated, measured doses over a long period." Julian's face turned white. "Are you implying someone is poisoning my mother?" "I'm saying we need to test for it. Specifically, for compounds the standard toxicology screens wouldn't detect." "Dr. Jacobs!" Dr. Harding's voice boomed from down the hall. "My office. Now." Julian gripped Ben's arm. "Wait. What kind of heavy metal?" Ben met his gaze, seeing the raw desperation of a son. "I can't be sure until we run the tests, but Mr. Vance, there's something more. Your mother has a new injection mark on her wrist. It's not in her medical records." His grip tightened. "What are you saying?" "It means someone gained access to her room without authorization." The color completely vanished from Julian's face. Behind them, Dr. Harding was striding toward them, his expression furious. Ben knew he had mere seconds before his career was over. "Please," Julian whispered. "Save my mother. I'll pay whatever it takes." But Ben was already contemplating a cost far greater than money. If someone was intentionally poisoning Eleanor Vance, they had access to the hospital. They knew her schedule. They knew her room. And they were still inside. Dr. Harding's office felt like an interrogation room. He sat behind his large desk, his fingers laced together, while Ben stood before him like a suspect awaiting his fate. "Do you have any concept of what you have just done?" His voice was unnervingly quiet. "You've accused an unknown person of attempted murder. You've implied this hospital's security is flawed, and you've done so based on a resident's guess." "It's not a guess, sir. The evidence has been examined by 40 specialists." He slammed a hand on his desk. "Toxicology reports came back negative twice. The injection mark you saw was from an IV placement yesterday. It's documented in the night shift's nursing notes." Ben's stomach lurched, but he had checked the chart himself. There was no such note. "Then you failed to check with sufficient care." Harding stood and walked to the window. "Dr. Jacobs, I recognize the desire young residents have to prove themselves to be the one who cracks the impossible case, but this isn't a television show. This is an elderly woman's life, and her son is desperate enough to grasp at any straw. Sir, please just authorize one more test, a specialized heavy metal panel. If I'm wrong, I will accept any and all repercussions." "You will accept the repercussions either way." He turned to face Ben. "You are being removed from the Vance case, effective now. You will finish your rotations in the outpatient clinic, and if you approach Julian Vance again without my explicit permission, you will be expelled from this residency program." The words struck him with physical force. Years of medical school, years of residency, all the sleepless nights, all on the verge of vanishing because he saw something everyone else was determined to ignore. "Dr. Harding, that woman is dying, and 40 doctors are trying to save her, doctors with decades more experience than you." His expression softened almost imperceptibly. "Ben, I know you mean well, but sometimes meaning well is not enough. Sometimes we must concede that we don't have all the answers." Ben left the office in a daze. The hallway seemed to stretch on forever. the lights buzzing harshly overhead. He had been so sure. The Mies lines, the injection mark, the constellation of symptoms that defied any conventional diagnosis. But what if Harding was right? What if he was just a resident playing detective, imagining a conspiracy where there was only a tragic, unsolvable mystery? He was nearly at the elevator when his phone vibrated. An unknown number. The message was brief. Parking garage, level 3, 5 minutes, come alone. JV. Every rational thought told him to erase the message and go home. He had been given a final warning. Another misstep and his career was finished. But then he pictured Eleanor in that bed, her body slowly giving out, while everyone debated rules and procedures. He pressed the button for the parking garage. The concrete structure was mostly deserted, his footsteps echoing in the quiet. He saw Julian leaning against a dark sedan, his security detail absent. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I know what Harding told you." "Then you know I can't help you. I'm off the case." "I don't care about the case." He held up his phone, displaying a picture. "I care about this." The photo showed Eleanor at a family gathering years earlier. She was laughing, full of life, a world away from the frail woman in room 512. "I've built a company worth billions," Julian said softly. "I've negotiated with world leaders. I have made the impossible happen by sheer determination, but I am powerless to save my own mother." His voice broke. "The doctors run the same tests, get the same results, and she only gets worse. You were the first person to offer a different explanation." "Mr. Vance, I could be entirely wrong. The injection mark could be what Dr. Harding said. The fingernails could mean nothing. But you don't believe that." He moved closer. "I saw your expression when you looked at her chart. You know something." Ben hesitated, balancing his entire future against a dying woman's last chance. "If I'm right about the poisoning, the standard screens would never find it. We'd need a specific panel for things like arsenic, thallium, or certain copper compounds." "I'll pay for it." Julian took out a black credit card. "Whatever it costs, whatever you need." "It's not about the money. I no longer have the authority to order tests. I've been removed. Then we'll do it unofficially." His eyes were pleading. "There are private labs, places that don't ask for authorization if the price is right. I will get you the samples. You tell me what to run." This was madness. Performing unauthorized tests on a patient, using samples obtained without consent. He could lose his license, even face criminal charges, but Eleanor's monitors were still counting down the time she had left. "There's one more thing," Ben said slowly. "If someone is poisoning your mother, they have easy, regular access to her. It could be someone on staff, but it might also be someone closer." Julian's jaw clenched. "You're suggesting family? Friends?" "I'm suggesting anyone who visits her frequently. Anyone who brings her food, gifts, anything she could ingest or come into contact with." Ben paused. "Mr. Vance, who has unrestricted access to your mother's room?" He was silent for a long moment. "My brother visits. Her personal assistant brings items from her home, and I am there whenever I'm not at the office." "What about the medical staff? A nurse or doctor who has been particularly attentive?" "There's a nurse, Clara Evans. She's been with my mother since she was admitted. Extremely devoted. Sometimes I find her in the room even when she's off her shift." A shiver went down Ben's spine. Why her? He pulled out his phone and accessed the hospital employee database. It took less than a minute to find her record. Clara Evans, RN, employed for 8 years. Stellar performance reviews, no complaints, and a note in her personnel file that made his blood run cold. Mother deceased after prolonged illness, cause undetermined. "Mr. Vance," Ben said carefully, "I need you to get me samples. Hair, a blood sample if you can, anything your mother has eaten or drunk in the past few days. Can you do it without anyone noticing? Yes. But Ben, may I call you Ben? What did you find? He looked at the powerful man, now reduced to begging a resident for help. I found a nurse who might have a motive to harm your mother, but I need evidence before I can make an accusation. How long will the tests take? 48 hours, maybe less if we pay extra. Julian nodded slowly. My mother doesn't have 48 hours. She crashed twice today. Harding says if it happens again, her organs could begin to fail. The gravity of his words hung in the air. 48 hours to confirm a theory, identify a poison, and save a life. Or 48 hours to watch his career implode while a woman died. Get me the samples, Ben said. Tonight. And Mr. Vance, do not tell anyone. Not your brother, not the hospital administration. If I am right, the person poisoning your mother is watching very closely. If they think we're on to them... He didn't need to complete the thought. Julian's phone buzzed. He looked at it, his face turning pale. It's the hospital. She's crashing again. They ran. By the time they got to room 512, a full code blue team was assembled. Eleanor's body was convulsing, her monitors blaring warnings that her heart was failing. Dr. Harding stood by the bed, shouting orders with detached precision. But Ben could see the weariness in his eyes. He recognized this pattern. 3 crashes in a single day. The next would likely be her last. Ben remained in the doorway, forbidden from entering, watching as they pushed medications into her IV. Julian tried to push past him, but security held him back, a son forced to be a spectator to his own mother's death. Clear, someone yelled. Eleanor's body jumped as the current passed through her. Nothing. Again, clear. This time, the monitor flickered to life. A slow, erratic beat. But it was there. Dr. Harding's shoulders slumped in relief, though his expression stayed grim. Get her stabilized. I want continuous monitoring. Page me if her heart rate drops below 50. He turned and saw Ben in the doorway. His eyes narrowed, but he said nothing. He didn't have to. They both knew Eleanor was out of time. As the team cleared out, Ben saw something that made his heart race. Nurse Clara Evans was standing near the IV stand, her hand on one of the bags. She adjusted something with a quick, expert movement. When she saw Ben watching, she offered a warm, professional smile. It was perfect. Too perfect. He pulled out his phone, feigning a text while snapping a photo of the IV setup. If Clara was adding something to Eleanor's infusions, it had to be through one of the existing lines. Dr. Jacobs? Clara's voice was pleasant as she walked over. I heard you were reassigned. Just checking in on Mrs. Vance, he said, keeping his tone even. That was a close one. Far too close. She glanced back at Eleanor, her expression impossible to read. I've been with her since the beginning. 8 months of watching her fade, and we're no closer to an answer. She paused. Though I heard you had a theory. Something about poisoning. Ben felt a chill. How did she know? His conversation with Harding had been private. Unless the hospital rumor mill was that efficient, or unless someone had been listening. Just exploring all possibilities, he said neutrally. Dr. Harding didn't feel it was worth pursuing. Probably for the best, Clara smiled again. Heavy metal poisoning would have appeared on the standard talk screens, and Mrs. Vance has been tested for everything. She moved nearer, her voice dropping. Between us, I suspect it's something from her past, some old stress catching up to her. These things can manifest in strange ways, you know. A slow decline that baffles modern medicine. She checked her watch. I should get back to my rounds, but Dr. Jacobs, be careful with theories. They can sometimes cause more harm than good. She walked off, leaving Ben standing there with a dozen new questions. His phone vibrated. It was Julian. Got the samples. Meet me at the lab service entrance in 20 minutes. But as Ben walked toward the elevator, he couldn't shake Clara's words. A slow decline that baffles modern medicine. It sounded less like a medical opinion and more like a mission statement. The service entrance was dark and empty when he arrived. Julian appeared from the shadows with a small cooler, his movements furtive. He looked less like a CEO and more like a man in the middle of a clandestine deal. Hair samples, a vial of blood from her last draw that I acquired, and the herbal tea her assistant brings her. He passed the cooler to Ben. Clara Evans was in the room when I gathered these. She watched my every move. If she's the one, she knows we suspect something. Ben took the cooler. Mr. Vance, I need to ask about your family, your mother. Was she always so beloved? Julian's face hardened. My mother built our first factory from the ground up. She was a tough woman, made a lot of enemies, fired a lot of people. Why? Because Clara Evans told me she thinks this is related to your mother's past. I found out her own mother was a worker at your original factory. She was fired by your mother 30 years ago. She died a few years later, after a long, undiagnosed illness. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Clara had been watching Eleanor since her admission. She had the medical expertise to induce symptoms that mimicked a natural decline. But why? What was the motive? There's more, Julian said, his voice low. Clara's mother, after she was fired, she lost everything, died in poverty. Clara took a leave of absence for the funeral, then came back and, over the years, worked her way into a position at this hospital. She specifically requested to be assigned to my mother's case. I'm taking these to a private lab now. Ben clutched the cooler. Results in 36 hours. But Mr. Vance, if Clara knows we're on to her, she might try to accelerate things. Your mother needs round-the-clock protection. Someone you trust. Absolutely, I'll stay with her myself. No, you have to act normal. If she thinks you're suspicious, she'll vanish and we'll never prove it. Hire private security. Tell the hospital it's for privacy from the media. Put someone in your mother's room at all times. Someone whose only job is to watch. Julian nodded, already on his phone. I'll have someone there in an hour. And Mr. Vance, don't let Clara touch you. If I'm right about this, you could be next. His face paled. Why would she want to harm my family? I don't know for sure yet, Ben said, but I'm going to find out. The private lab was tucked into a nondescript building 40 minutes away. Ben handed over the samples and Julian's credit card, demanding a full heavy metal panel with a rush order. 36 hours, the technician said. I need it sooner. That's extra. I don't care what it costs. He drove back to his apartment, his mind a whirlwind of possibilities. Clara Evans was present, attentive, and her mother had been ruined by the patient decades ago. He needed to know more. On his old laptop, he started digging. He found an old news article about a labor dispute at the Vance factory 30 years ago. One of the fired workers quoted was a woman named Maria Evans, Clara's mother. The article detailed her despair. Then he searched for medical case studies. Iatrogenic copper toxicity. Deliberate poisoning. Copper could be administered over time to perfectly mimic a slow, degenerative illness. It would cause neurological damage, liver failure, a gradual decline, and standard tox screens wouldn't detect it unless you were specifically looking for copper. Clara's mother had died of a slow, wasting disease. Now Clara was an expert in slow, wasting diseases. She wasn't just getting revenge, she was recreating her mother's suffering in the person she blamed for it. His phone rang. It was Julian. Ben, you have to get to the hospital. Right now. What is it? My mother. She's awake, and she's asking for Clara. Ben broke every traffic law getting back. Julian met him outside Eleanor's room, where a large man in a suit stood guard. She woke up 20 minutes ago, Julian said. "The first time she's been lucid in months. The doctors are calling it a miracle. But Ben, she keeps asking for Nurse Evans. She says she needs to thank her." Through the window, Ben could see Eleanor propped up, her face pale but her eyes clear. Dr. Harding was at her side, looking cautiously optimistic. "Where is Clara?" Ben asked. "She went off duty an hour ago. We can't reach her." A chill went through him. Clara knew they were investigating, and now Eleanor was suddenly awake and asking for her. This wasn't a miracle. It was the final move in a long game. "Mr. Vance, we have to move your mother. Now. A different room? A different floor? Somewhere Clara doesn't know?" "What? Why?" "She's finally getting better." "She's not getting better. Clara stopped poisoning her because she knows we're getting close. But she can't leave your mother alive to identify her. She's waiting for the perfect moment to finish it." Ben grabbed his arm. "That moment is now. When everyone's guard is down, that's when Clara will return to administer a final lethal dose." Julian's face went ashen. "You're saying her recovery is bait?" "Yes. We move her immediately, and we make it look like she's still in this room. The security guard stays. We dim the lights. We put a mannequin in the bed. When Clara comes back, we'll be waiting." "And if you're wrong?" "Then I will apologize and resign, but I'm not wrong. Clara's mother died a slow, unexplained death after yours fired her. Clara has been poisoning your mother to recreate that fate. This isn't a coincidence. This is revenge." Julian stared at him, then nodded. "I'll speak to Harding. We'll move her to the private wing under a false name. But Ben, if this goes sideways..." "It won't." But as he watched Julian walk off, he felt a flicker of doubt. They moved Eleanor after midnight, transferring her to a VIP suite on a secure floor. The room was registered to a Jane Doe. Back in room 512, they arranged a mannequin in the bed, pulling the covers up to its chin. In the dim light, it was convincing. The guard remained posted, instructed to let Clara in but to alert them the moment she arrived. Now, they waited. Ben sat by Eleanor's new bed. "Eleanor," he said gently, "has anyone been giving you anything unusual? Supplements? Special teas?" She frowned. "My assistant, she brings me a special tea. Clara gave her the recipe. Said it was an old family remedy for strength." Her eyes widened. "Oh, God. Is that what's making me sick?" "We don't know for sure. What about Clara? Has she said anything strange?" Eleanor looked confused. "She's been so kind. She sits with me, tells me stories about her mother, how she suffered, how the world was unjust." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "She said she wouldn't let me suffer like that. She promised she would make sure my passing was peaceful." The room went cold. Clara wasn't trying to save Eleanor. In her warped mind, she was granting her a mercy she believed her own mother never received. Ben's phone buzzed. A text from the lab. "Preliminary results are in. Call immediately." He stepped into the hall, his hand shaking as he dialed. "You were right," the technician said. "Copper levels are through the roof. Consistent with chronic, long-term poisoning. Someone has been systematically killing this person. Send me the full report. It's in your email. But listen, you need to call the authorities. This is attempted murder." He hung up and opened the email. The numbers were irrefutable. He had proof. He walked back into the room. "Lab results," he said, showing his phone to Julian and Dr. Harding. "Copper poisoning, chronic, deliberate." Julian closed his eyes. "So it's true?" "Yes," Ben said. "Clara Evans blamed your mother for her own mother's death. This is her revenge." Dr. Harding, who had been silent, finally spoke. "We need to call the police." Just then his phone rang. He answered, listened, and his face went white. "She's there, now. Don't let her leave. We're on our way." He hung up, looking at Ben with newfound respect. Clara just arrived at room 512. She says she has something important for Mrs. Vance. The final dose, Ben said. She's going to finish it. They ran. The room was just as they'd left it, but now Clara Evans stood by the bed, her back to them, holding a syringe. She was speaking softly to the mannequin. "I'm sorry it came to this, Eleanor, but it's for the best. You'll be at peace. You won't suffer anymore. I promise." Dr. Harding flipped on the lights. "Clara, step away from the bed." She spun around, syringe in hand, her face a mask of shock that quickly hardened into resolve. She looked at the mannequin, then at them. "Where is she?" Her voice was flat. "Somewhere safe," Ben said. "Somewhere you can't harm her." "Harm her?" Clara laughed, a chilling sound. "I was helping her. I was ending her suffering. The same way your mother made my mother suffer. She had everything, and my mother had nothing. She was left to waste away while your family built an empire. Your mother deserved to understand that pain. You murdered people." Julian's voice trembled with rage. "I gave them justice." Clara's composure finally broke. "Do you have any idea what it's like to watch your mother die slowly, knowing no one cares? She could have helped. She could have shown some mercy, but she didn't. So I made sure her end was just as slow, just as painful." The syringe fell from her hand. "I was helping. I was giving her peace." Security arrived with police officers. They read Clara her rights as she stood there, tears on her face, still muttering that she was being merciful. As they led her away, she looked at Julian. "Your mother could have saved her. This is all her fault." Then she was gone. Dr. Brennan turned to Ben. "Dr. Jacobs," he said, his voice heavy, "you saved that woman's life. If you hadn't seen that detail, if you hadn't pushed back, you're going to be an exceptional physician." Julian gripped Ben's hand. Thank you for not giving up on her." "I just noticed a detail," Ben said. "No." Julian shook his head. "The rest was courage. You trusted yourself when 40 other experts were wrong. That's what saved my mother." Days later, Ben stood in Eleanor's real room. Sunlight streamed in. She was sitting up, the color returning to her face. The copper chelation therapy was working. She was going to live. "Ben," she said when she saw him, "my son told me everything, how you saved me." "I just connected the dots," he replied. "She really thought she was helping," Eleanor said softly. "She truly believed she was being kind." "She was sick," Ben said gently. "Grief twisted her mind until she couldn't see the difference between mercy and murder." Julian appeared in the doorway and handed Ben an envelope. Inside was a check with an astronomical number of zeros. "Mr. Vance, I can't take this." "Yes, you can," he insisted. "You gave me back my mother. There is no price for that. But please let me do this." Ben looked at the check, then at Eleanor, laughing with her son. A woman who should have been dead. "Okay," he said. "On one condition, we use this to establish a foundation, free medical care for the families of former factory workers, the kind of help that might have saved Clara's mother." Julian smiled through tears. "My mother would have liked that. She would have liked you." As Ben walked away, his phone buzzed. A message from Dr. Harding, "My office. Tomorrow, 9 a.m. He smiled. Whatever was next, he would face it knowing he had done the right thing. He had trusted his instincts, he had fought for his patient, and he had saved a life. That was more than enough.